exceptionally lonely. It's the loneliest I can say I've ever been. At one point, just before COVID, I remember we put the wages on our credit card. Pressure's a pleasure. If you're under pressure, then you know that you're doing something good and worthwhile. And he came to me and he said, no, you've got a really good business, you're a really good person, and you need to just keep going. And he really was my crutch, and he helped me fall in love with my business again. And I think if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here today and my business wouldn't be here today. I'm just very determined. When I want something, I make sure that I get it. I think the want to be in law is a vocation. It's not a career. It's never been about money for me. It's always been about the clients and the staff. We are not competing with each other anymore. That's not what lawyers are about anymore. There is enough work out there for everybody. I'm in love with what I do. I'm just exceptionally grateful to be where I am. Not a lot of people would have stuck at it, and a lot of people would have given up and gone and done something else. And so I'm proud of you.
Hello, I'm Charles Peter. Today we're delighted to welcome Alisha Butler, an award-winning personal injury and medical negligence specialist with over 28 years of experience. For more than a decade, Alisha has focused on high-value, complex claims exceeding £1 million with particular expertise in catastrophic injury cases. Her work is driven by a clear mission to prioritise people over profit and to ensure every client has access to justice. Alisha has twice been nominated as a legal hero, and her firm has received multiple accolades, including Law Firm of the Year at the 2025 Liverpool Law Society Awards for firms of 1 to 49. She's also a member of the Association of Personal Injury Lawyers, a solicitor advocate, and serves on the Liverpool Dispute Resolution Committee. Alisha, welcome to our podcast. Tell me a little bit about your practice.
So our practice is owned by myself. I'm a sole. We have, I think, around 4 solicitors, and then the rest of it is made up of junior support staff. I think there's about 15 staff at the moment.
And what does your practice do?
So we do clinical negligence, landlord and tenant, wills and probate, and general civil.
That's an interesting mixture, isn't it?
It is. I think across my career, which spans about 30 years now, I've gone across a spectrum of personal injury, credit hire, low velocity, clinical negligence, and general civil. So I've touched on every area, so it's easier for me to support the staff if I know how to do it myself.
And personally, what sort of law do you practice?
So I do high value, catastrophic personal injury or birth brain injuries, clinical negligence, so £1 million plus generally.
Goodness, that must be a lot of pressure.
Pressure's a pleasure. If you're under pressure, then you know that you're doing something good and worthwhile, so I enjoy it.
So where did it all begin? What made you want to become a lawyer?
Watching television when I was younger, and I think I wanted to just right the world. I'm a very outspoken person, don't like people being bullied, always stuck up for people in school that were bullied, and always wanted to just fight the injustice. So all of my school reports, which I still have quite a few of them, say that I wanted to always be a lawyer. So I wanted to be a criminal lawyer originally, but unlucky, I fell into personal injury. So
Well, some people would disagree with that. Some people would say you made precisely the right move there.
And then I went to school, failed my GCSEs, unfortunately, and then went on to do an open access course, which was for people who were over the age of 18. That was in Liverpool. It was equivalent to A-levels, so I did that. Because I did start A-levels but failed those as well. So wasn't very good at writing and remembering. I'm more of a person that if I can do short bursts of things, then I can remember it, more of a practical person. And I'm also numerically dyslexic as well, which doesn't help. And then once I passed that course, I was lucky enough to get into John Moores University. And that's where it all began, really. Failed my first year, which was expected, I think. Then got, I think, the lowest degree possible. Is it a third? So not a great degree, but it was a pass to me and I was thankful for it. And then worked my way through various different law firms, and here I am now.
Well, if I may, if we go back to the television right in the beginning, because this is a common theme that I've noticed interviewing almost all the lawyers that I've interviewed, is when I ask them, what was it that first sparked your imagination? And it's surprising that almost all of them say, well, including myself, it's something that I saw on the television. So what was it that you saw on which programme was it?
I want to say Ally McBeal, but it probably wasn't because it was before then. So I wouldn't know what programme it was before then, but they were always legal programmes that I was watching, or police programmes. So
Well,
I'm
for
not
me,
sure.
it was Crown Court, which was in the 70s. So that's a long time ago. The 1970s, by the way. And for others, I've noticed it was LA Law. That was another one.
That's a good one.
And then finally, the youngest people, it was Ally McBeal. And almost all of them wanted to be criminal lawyers at that time because it seemed glamorous and you could change the world, and it wasn't true, was it, in real life? But anyway, that's just my experience. So you watch these television programs and you're in school, I presume, and you take your GCSEs and you don't pass them. That must have been quite a blow.
I think for me, I knew I wasn't going to pass them. I just knew that I wasn't very good at them. I'm better off speaking to people, practical. My brother's the same. He's very good with his hands. He can make anything. My sister is exceptional. She has a doctorate. She's a forensic psychologist. She's great at just regurgitating information. I resat them, passed a couple, but I just knew that exams are not for me. So I needed a different way in. I needed to do something that was more focused on not exams at the end of a 2-year period.
And you refer to an organisation in Liverpool that helped you, supported you, put you in the right direction. Is that right?
So it was more of I think it was an access course. So it was the equivalent to A-levels, and I think it was at Edge Hill University. So it was, I suppose, an AS or an A-level where you just did a couple of months, then an exam or coursework, and that's how you then passed that course. So for me, that worked a lot better.
And then you moved on to Liverpool John Moores University. What was that like?
It was horrifying. I was so scared. I just knew, again, that I was going to have these exams. I would panic. My mum would just be there for me, trying to calm me down. It was horrific, but I knew that I had to do it to get to where I wanted to be, and there was nothing else that I wanted to do, so I had to find a way to just get through.
I guess a lot of people would have not had the resilience that you had after subsequent failures, as you've spoken about, to keep going. So what do you think it was that fueled that desire, that notwithstanding the difficulties that you've spoken about, that impelled you to carry on?
I'm just very determined. When I want something, I make sure that I get it.
So we go back to Liverpool John Moores. You said earlier that the first year was a bit difficult. Was it a 3-year course?
It was.
And how did the other 2 years go?
A little bit better. I calmed down a little bit, probably went out a little bit less, partied a little bit less, concentrated a little bit more, and worked my way through it. I think the difficult thing was that I was also working at the same time. I was very interested in making money, getting on the property ladder. And so for me, I bought my first house when I was 21. That was during the time that I was at university as well. So it was very important for me to work and go to university at the same time, which probably wasn't the best idea, but...
Well, it must have been very difficult, mustn't it, if you had a job at the same time as studying, and you weren't doing a part-time degree. It was 3 years, was it?
It was, yes.
And working at the same time. Where were you working?
So I was working in pubs, nightclubs, care homes, overnight weekends.
Now, I've got a theory about working in pubs. I think, for those people who are watching, who might wonder what to put on their CV, Personally, I think people that work face-to-face jobs, whether it's in a pub, a hotel or something like that, I think for those people that work in face-to-face employment, it's wonderful preparation for dealing with clients.
It's really good customer care experience.
That's the word I was looking for.
If you can deal with drunk people, people who are annoyed because they haven't got their meal on time, people who don't want to pay a bill, it's great experience. So it's something that I would always recommend putting on a CV, that you've got customer care experience. Equally, when I worked in care homes, dealing with the elderly, that's a different set of people that you're dealing with, people with mental health problems, people with health issues. So anything like that, I think, would shine out on a CV.
Because a lot of young people don't know what to put on their CV because they've got to start somewhere, and it's difficult to show any experience if they haven't had any. So I suppose we would say, well, do something that shows that you're determined, do something that shows that you're not lazy, and do something that's public facing, because that's really going to help.
Exactly. Anything that's public facing with customer service is always a bonus.
Can I take you to the end of Liverpool John Moores University?
You can.
Where did you go then?
I stayed there to do my LPC and continued to work whilst I did that as well.
How did you find the LPC, which we all know now has changed into something else?
A lot better, a lot easier for me, because it was smaller chunks of learning with exams or coursework. So I found that really easy.
Now that's interesting, because I did the Law Society finals, and that was the worst year of my life professionally. And your experience of the LPC it was entirely different. We now have the SQE1 and the SQE2. Do you have any views on those two exams?
I think the LPC was easier for me because I was working in law at the same time. So I think that made the learning easier, because I also had the on-the-job experience. I think that's what the SQE will also give people. I think the difficulty is doing the exams and doing the work at the same time, doing the study at the same time, but that's just about people managing their time more appropriately. And I think that's what people need to learn, or that's what they need to be given advice on, is managing their time.
I do think that despite what people say about the SQE1 and 2, where the pass rates are in the 40%, I think, the Law Society finals, I believe, were 33%. But they taught you nothing at all about what it is like to practice. Whereas if you work, you have a context for understanding the academic part of the learning, which I think is much better, rather than you're just dropped in from nowhere into a pathway that you don't understand. For example, you're shown a form, perhaps B1 3.2.4, fill this in. It makes no sense whatsoever. So being in the environment, getting the work experience that's necessary now to become a solicitor, I think it's a very good idea.
I agree. I'm not sure whether this is true, but I think they probably found that those people that did the LPC that were working at the same time probably had a better pass rate, because like you say, if you were told to fill out a form, you knew exactly how to do it because you were doing it in practice. Yes. So I think the SQE gives those people that advantage.
And where were you working at the time you were doing the LPC?
I've worked at a lot of places. So I worked at camps. I then moved to Hilary Meredith, and I eventually got my training contract with Ken Spector at the Spector Partnership.
And what kind of work did they do?
The Spector Partnership, they did credit hire and low impact collisions. Prior to that, I'd done coal miner claims at Hilary Meredith.
Coal miner claims?
Which was very interesting. I got to meet quite a lot of coal miners.
So it's very different kind of experiences there. And then you'll have qualified as a solicitor?
I did, thanks to Ken Spector.
And where did you go then?
I then went to a small firm that was starting out that didn't grow, unfortunately, but then I was taken on by Paul Hampson at Hampson Hughes, which I will forever be grateful for. They were exceptional. A pair of directors taught me a lot, and then I left to set up my own business.
Now, this is always an interesting
I wanted to build my own business because the background that I'd come from, I had worked extremely hard to get into law. First started out at camps working for them for free for 3 months, and then on an extremely low salary just to get my foot in the door. Didn't have the right background in terms of my law degree or my GCSEs, so I really needed to prove myself, and I wanted to open a law firm where people could start on their career without the usual traditional methods of GCSE, law degree, and I wanted apprenticeships to be able to be available to those people that maybe came from the same background that I did or a poorer income background, but still had the want to be in law, because I think the want to be in law is a vocation. It's not a career. I see it as a vocation, the need to help people and the want to help people. It's never been about money for me. It's always been about the clients and the staff.
Tell us a little bit more about the structure of your practice vis-a-vis apprenticeships then. What would somebody who may be watching this, who's quite young and wonders, what on earth, how do I do it? What kind of things should I be thinking of?
So in our practice, every solicitor has a support member of staff, which would be a paralegal or legal assistant or a trainee solicitor. So usually we will hire our support staff as paralegals or legal assistants, and then we tend to get a very quick flavour for how determined they are on their career path, and if we can see something in them, then we'll put them on an apprenticeship straight away, or we'll give them the opportunity to do a training contract straight away. I think the difficulty that people have when they join other law firms, particularly bigger law firms, is they're promised an apprenticeship or a training contract, but then when they get there might be 10 other people ahead of them, and they realise actually that they've been sold something that just doesn't exist. When you go into a smaller law firm, you don't have that fight to the finish to get the training contract, and I think you're kind of thrown in at the deep end, so you get a varied experience as well. So our trainees and apprenticeships, whilst they may support one member of staff, such as a clinical negligence solicitor, they may be asked to do a little bit of housing disrepair or a little bit of probate, take some instructions from clients, so they get such a varied knowledge that I think is something that you only get in a small firm.
If we're to talk about what it's like to be an apprentice from your point of view, what would you say their daily life is like in your practice? What's the ordinary way of working for somebody that's on an apprenticeship?
Well, we've just had somebody start an apprenticeship recently with yourselves, and they've said that it's hard work. They've been out of study for quite a while, so they're just getting themselves back into that rhythm of study and working at the same time. But for them, they find it really interesting, the varied amount of work that they're doing. In our firm, we do 4.5 days a week, so everybody gets Friday afternoon off, but they just do a little bit of a longer day, Monday to Thursday.
I just want to stop you there. You do realise now you've said that you'll probably get thousands of applications to work there because they have Friday afternoon off.
I don't like working Friday afternoon, so if I don't like it, I don't think anybody else likes it.
So if the boss doesn't like it, you're in good company then?
Well, exactly, and I very much believe in do as I do, not as I say. So just, if I don't like it, I don't think anybody else should have to do it either.
So this sounds a very different experience from other practices.
Yes, very much so. I don't like people to work late if they don't want to work late. When I was in practice, I was always told that you needed to be the first in the office and you needed to leave after the boss left to make sure that they knew that you were still there. And that's something I think a lot of us were told. I don't think that's apparent anymore. I think that as long as you put in the work and you are putting in the dedication and the effort, then that's all that matters. Staying late is not really a thing anymore. It's more work-life balance is important.
Now, you have a novel way of allowing your apprentices to do their study work. How does that work?
So they get to do their off-the-job time in the office. We like them to do it in the office because historically we have had people that have done it at home, and then we've found that they've been distracted or they've not managed to do their webinars, and that impacts them as well as us. So now we have people that come into the office on their off the job time. They go into an interview room or a separate room and they can just study there themselves all day long. They're not allowed to be distracted. They get their studies done. And I think a lot of people nowadays still live at home, so they may not have that area where they can study. So I think it's easier and better for them if they have a space where they can come and do their studies.
Because, of course, that way, I suppose, if they have an issue with what they're studying, if they have a question or something that doesn't make sense, they're able to nip out of the room and go and ask somebody rather than having to write it down or forget about the problem and never asking anybody for a solution.
Yeah, so you're there to just talk it through with them.
That sounds quite a perfect balance. Well, we got to, I'm going to open my own practice. That's an enormous leap to do on your own, I suspect. How did that start?
It started in my spare bedroom.
Tell us more.
In 2017, I was working as a consultant for another law firm, doing some clin neg work. And then I set up my business, submitted my business plan to the SRA and waited patiently.
How long did
for them.
that take?
It took quite a while for various reasons. But when they eventually came back to me, that was it. I then had to think, right, what do I do now? I need a case management system. I need a bank account. I need to find work from somewhere. How am I going to do all this? Which is things that I hadn't thought of, frankly, before I'd even decided to submit my business plan.
You will have needed some premises, because I think you've got to have physical premises, don't you, if you're going to practice? Well, for now, anyway. Was that the first thing that you looked for? I need to find somewhere to open up.
I'm a great believer in fate. And so shortly after I got the approval from the SRA, a little shop down in West Kirby came up for rent, and I immediately went to see it. And it was for a great price. And so I snapped it up and we opened up with no cases.
And how many people did you employ at that time?
One. So I had one person, and then shortly followed by a legal cashier, because we all need those. That's part of our requirements, isn't it? Bought second-hand furniture. All the furniture was second-hand. My husband and my dad painted the office for us. We got some signage, and there we sat patiently waiting for cases to come in.
That sounds extremely worrying to me. So you've opened up, and you've got a person working with you and a finance person. Where did the work come from? How did you go about attracting work?
Again, fate. Somebody contacted me on LinkedIn, told me that they knew someone that was closing down their firm. They were retiring, and would I like to take on a book of holiday sickness claims, which I'd never done before. And I said yes, absolutely, and took them on. A couple of them settled, and we just went from there.
And your business has been growing since 2017.
Yes.
Is it an organic growth? Was it an organic growth?
It was an organic growth, yeah. We don't spend a lot on marketing. We don't spend any money at all bringing work in, really. We began to get into the black just before COVID hit.
Oh.
And then when COVID hit, that knocked us completely off our feet, and we had to start all over again.
That was in March, wasn't it? March 2020?
Was it March 2020?
When, around the 23rd, because I remember walking in Liverpool, and there was a football match, an international football match, I think. And I wondered why there were all these people walking around the city coughing. And I thought, they're going to shut us down, they're going to shut us down. And my practice was still using paper. And on the 23rd, I think it was, or the 21st, we took a decision where we're just going to have to shut down and work online. And that transition was very difficult.
I think it was difficult for a lot of firms, but we'd already gone paperless in the majority, so we were quite ahead of ourselves there.
Yes.
We still had to furlough all of our staff, so I had to get the photocopier transported back to the spare bedroom,
Wow.
the phone lines back to the spare bedroom, and that's where I worked again.
That's incredible.
Doing well, I don't know how I did it, because I was then the post person, the receptionist, and the file handler.
Determination, I suppose, is part of it. Well, I was going to say, can you describe a recent period of professional pressure? So maybe we could use that. So if we go back to COVID, we know what was happening because the country shut down. And what did you actually do in response to that then? You said you went back to working in a bedroom.
Yep.
But it's not as simple as that, is it? So what did you physically have to do?
That's what we did. We moved everything to the spare bedroom. We shut the office. We furloughed all of the staff. My husband had just lost his job, and his employer wouldn't take him back on and furlough him, so he had no income. The firm had no income because no cases were settling, and so it was extremely difficult personally and professionally.
And at that time, it sounds very isolating, even by definition. All sorts of things must have been crossing your mind at that time. And how did you navigate those difficulties in your head?
I think it was just a sink or swim situation, though there is no way out. Once you open a law firm, it's not easy to shut that law firm. You have to buy 6 years worth of insurance if you want to close down. At that time, we had no money, so that wasn't an option. So it was just, we had to keep going.
That's quite extraordinary. So when did you manage to, like the rest of us, I suppose, see the light of day after COVID, and how did that manifest itself in your practice?
In 2022, I unfortunately lost my mum, and that kept me at a low point. So I still hadn't recovered from COVID professionally. And having lost my mum, I was still quite down about the business. And so I had the fortunate experience of meeting someone called Ian Cohen, who people in Liverpool will undoubtedly know. And he came to me, and I was thinking about selling or closing or just getting rid. I'd had enough. And he came to me and he said, no, you've got a really good business. You're a really good person, and you need to just keep going, and I'll help you, and I'll help you for free. And he came in and he gave me 6 months worth of business acumen and business support. And he really was my crutch for that period of time. And he helped me fall in love with my business again. And I think if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here today, and my business wouldn't be here today.
Well, on a slightly happier note, what does you're obviously a successful person, a determined person, and I suspect that there are many people, the majority of people, that wouldn't have been able to find their way through all these setbacks. And what does being a good solicitor, in inverted commas, mean to you?
To me, being a good solicitor is about helping people. I really think, as I said before, it's a vocation, like being a doctor or a nurse. It's important because the people that are in need the most are at a time in their life when they have nowhere else to turn. They've just experienced something really catastrophic, like a brain injury, losing a loved one, amputation, whatever it is. And they call upon you at a time in need, and you then become their solicitor, their counsellor, a member of their family eventually. And so for me, it's just one of the most important things that anybody could think of doing.
You speak in terms of emotional attachment. You talk about the journey between being instructed to begin with and hopefully the end, whether it's a good end or not such a great end, but you necessarily become emotionally attached, and certainly they will, to you. Does that itself pose difficulties to the extent that you have to be able to look at things objectively and perhaps detach a little bit from that? How does that work?
I think for them, you are their detachment from the situation, aren't you? Because you can go to them honestly and say, I'm outside of this area, I'm outside of what's going on, and I will be your truth. So I will look at your case for you, I'll get those records for you, and I will be honest with you, and I will tell you that actually that NHS trust did everything that they could for your loved one. And sometimes it's not about getting the compensation, it's about getting them the peace of mind.
There is no doubt that dealing with cases that you describe, that sort of case, will have some vicarious trauma attached to it. Because you'll be looking at very sad and difficult circumstances day in and day out. I wonder if that close connection to trauma, other people's trauma, attaches itself in some way to you.
I don't think I've ever thought about it. I think if I actually sat and thought about it, you probably would say yes, it does.
So that might mean that you have a mechanism to deal with that, whether it's unconscious or consciously. And there'll be people watching, I hope, that think, this is difficult because I might be faced with a lot of really difficult cases. And it's not about being brave, it's not about being so resilient that either you sink or swim. It's about a process that perhaps you might follow that allows you to deal with these difficult cases repeatedly for year on year. And I'm wondering, you say you've never thought about that, so I wonder if it's unconscious or not. But how do you separate yourself, if you like, then, from the experience of what your clients are going through from... Because you must need to insulate yourself in some way, otherwise you'll become an enormous sponge, endlessly absorbing other people's trauma.
I don't see it that way.
How do you see it?
I see my job, which I don't call a job, a little bit like a hobby. I wanted it so bad that now I'm in it, I'm extremely grateful for it. And every day for me, I just am in love with what I do. I'm just exceptionally grateful to be where I am. So for me, I just don't see it that way.
I think people say if you go to work and it doesn't feel like work, you're in the right job or something like that, I think. What strategies have you developed over the years for managing pressure?
I now
Yes.
work 21 days without a day off.
Does that include weekends?
It does. So it's 21 days. And then I will take a week and I will go abroad, somewhere nice and sunny, get my rays into my skin that make me feel a lot happier, get some heat on my skin. I still work from 9 o'clock in the morning till 12. And then I get to spend the whole day and evening with my husband. And that gives me complete downtime then. Working a normal week for me and then trying to switch off at weekends just didn't work, because as a business owner you don't get to switch off. And so I had to find a different way where I could have that little bit of downtime. Having weekends that were bank holidays where the office is closed gives me that extra bit of headspace. Going away at Christmas and New Year, so we shut the office between Christmas and New Year. All of our staff get 2 weeks off. I think it's a great time for people to spend with their family and their loved ones. I equally like the same. So that time for me is very, very important. My head can be cleared. I tend to work still on business development during that time because, again, I love what I do so much that it's just like a hobby. People say to me, you need to get a hobby. And I did think about it, and I actually applied for an animal rights charity to be an advocate for them, because the law for me is just so interesting and I just love what I do. So I just can't escape it.
Could I ask you about your usual week then? You say that you work 7 days a week for 21 days.
Yeah.
Do you have fixed times? I'm going to start work at 9 o'clock and I'm going to finish at 5 o'clock. Or does the work become, it inhabits you, as it were? It's like you're possessed by the framework of being a solicitor. How does it work for you? What's your typical day?
So I wake up about 7:30. I'll check on our TikTok, I'll check on LinkedIn, and I'll get my post ready for that day if I haven't already scheduled it. So I do a lot of our social media and business development in the mornings. I then go to the office about 10 o'clock. I will work then through the day, probably till around 7 o'clock at night. I then go home and then I have my dinner. I go for a 4-mile walk with my husband and the dogs. And that's it. And on a Friday, my husband will come into the office with me. We do 10 till 2. He cleans the office, takes all the rubbish away, does all of the cleaning. And then by 4 o'clock on a Friday, we are in a restaurant having wine. That's my Friday.
I'm going to come on to coping strategies.
And then Saturday, I will start work probably around 10 o'clock again, but at home. My husband will do some work on the house because we're in the middle of building an extension. And then the same on Sunday. I'll finish work about 2 o'clock, so 10 till 2 on a Saturday and Sunday.
Now, this isn't the 9 to 5 that the media would have us believe we should all work to, is it?
No.
I'm interested to know this strategy that you have, how you learned to adopt that. Was it something as soon as you started that you said, I'm going to do this? Or has it become a learned matter since you opened? How has it come about, this strategy of the way that you work?
I think for me, even when I was at university, I had a job. So I've always had that work ethic. When I worked at Hampton Hughes as a director, I also owned a statement drafting company. So I worked on that in the evenings and at the weekends. So I've always had that second job. As a law firm owner now, I've only recently just stopped working as a consultant for another law firm, which I've been doing for the last 4 years. So for me, work just drives me, pressure drives me. I really enjoy it. Getting that time away with my husband once a month came about from him having cancer. He had cancer in his eye and lost the sight in his eye, and the eyesight in his other eye is diminishing. And it was important for me to not stop doing what I love, because I do absolutely love what I do, but to also take him away on holiday and experience as many countries as we can, whilst he can still see the things that, he needs to see while you're abroad. I'm not saying that he's going to lose his sight completely. I don't want people to feel sorry for me, but I think those are factors that you think about as you get older as well, that you think, how many holidays have I got left? How many Christmases do I have left? It's quite morbid, but these are the reality of the things that we need to think about. I don't want to stop working because I love what I do. So I needed to find that balance. I needed to balance home life, my husband, and enjoying ourselves with also me enjoying work.
Because being a sole practitioner, to use an old phrase, could be very lonely. How have you managed that?
It's exceptionally lonely. It's the loneliest I can say I've ever been. But I was thankful that Ian came along and gave me the help and support that I needed. And I would say to anybody out there that owns their own law firm, find somebody else and be a support to each other. because we are not competing with each other anymore. That's not what lawyers are about anymore. There is enough work out there for everybody. And I think it's important, and we know nowadays that it's important to have that work-life balance. Our mental health is important, and having a support network is important. And my husband didn't come from a legal background, so he didn't know what I was talking about, didn't know the pressures that I was under. It was hard for him to understand. And I think he, like a lot of the public, thought that lawyers made a lot of money and that, money just rolled in. Now he knows that the government don't really like lawyers and they want to cut our fees as much as they can where they can. And so it's very difficult for us to make money. And he appreciates that now. But that comes from being 9 years in and him seeing how difficult it's been. But we're not taught to be business people. We don't know how to run a business. We're lawyers. So you need somebody that's been there and done it, or you need somebody that's run a successful business to give you that support and that information that you need.
And this is not what they teach you in law school, is it?
No.
Nowhere, as far as I'm aware, is there a module about what it's actually like to run a business and the sort of things that you need to know. You can't learn about that from watching YouTube.
No, and I think if you work in a business that's successful, like I did in Hampson Hughes, it grew very big, very quickly. The people that ran it, John and Paul, looked like it was enjoyable, made it look easy. I can't imagine how difficult it must have been from them because they were very young at the time. They were younger than me. And so now that I've done it myself, I can understand what they went through. But they had each other. And at the time that they were supporting each other, but they made it look easy. Boy, did they make it look easy.
It's very difficult to pull off, I imagine. Well, let's talk about the way external structures inside law impact your ethical agency. So what I mean by that is that if only we didn't have to deal with the courts, if only we didn't have to deal with the bureaucracy, life would be an awful lot easier being a lawyer. And we have to perhaps make shortcuts as a result of external pressure. For example, you know that a case that you're dealing with probably needs 4 to 6 months' work, but the court is saying, I'll give you 6 weeks. How does that impact what you do?
I think it adds additional pressure that shouldn't be there. I think it makes us work quicker, but not necessarily effectively. If you have staff that aren't necessarily experienced, I think that it has made a lot of law firms hire paralegals and have a business model that's run predominantly on paralegals. And we now know that that may not be allowable because of the Mazur case, which we are all holding our breath for the result of.
We should say that I think it's in the 3rd day when we're recording this, so no doubt when this podcast is released, it will be all over and we'll know our fate.
If it doesn't go any higher and there isn't a further appeal,
of course,
which I fear there may be. But I think the model that we've had to all adapt to because our costs are cut is that we have to get unqualified people doing things really under supervision and under pressure that's been put on us by other people. And that has eroded, I think, access to justice, which for me is a really important thing. And I think when you start eroding access to justice for the general public, a country is doomed.
There's a problem, isn't there? Because the media hate lawyers.
Fat cat lawyers.
Fat cat lefty lawyers, I think, was a theme some years ago. And it distorts, doesn't it, the impression that people have of our profession, in that they think that because we may wear nice suits or dress well or speak in a certain way, that we're making an awful lot of money. And I think it's difficult to counter that narrative. One, because we're all too busy actually working. Secondly, because we don't have any media influence in reality. And I wonder whether the profession is stuck with that, because the end result, in my opinion, is just what you say, which is that the political will to invest in the justice system will be eroded because the politicians will probably feel they'll get more votes out of the people that are having a go at lawyers rather than those that are supporting them. But I suppose historically, 'twas always thus. I can't remember now who said, the first thing I'll do when I become a dictator is kill all the lawyers.
I think sadly as well, we've got a situation now at the moment of the SRA, who have recently published a lot about no win, no fee, and how I think that will further distort people's impression of no win, no fee solicitors. I'm a solicitor advocate and I go to court quite a lot. And a lot of litigants in person will bang their hand on the table and shout about how I am a no win, no fee solicitor and how I'm there just making money off the back of bringing a nonsensical claim against them because they've done something wrong to their tenant, completely disregarding the fact that they've done something wrong that's got us there in the first place. And do we get the chance to say, Judge, whether I'm no win, no fee or not is irrelevant? No, because we're not there to go back and forth and argue with the litigant in person in front of the judge. So we don't get to defend our point. But if no win, no fee solicitors didn't exist, people wouldn't have the access to justice that they have now. And so I'm frankly tired of this rhetoric that is bandied about. And I think it's really disappointing that the SRA have made the publication that they've made, how no win, no fee is not transparent, that you can be charged costs. You know, that's something that's always been in a CFA. The hourly rate has always been in there. So I can't see how it's never been transparent. Yes, there are firms that have gone bust and have left a lot of people in a bad situation, and the ATE is not followed through on their requirements, but don't tar everybody with the same brush. And I'm really disappointed in what they've done.
Can I ask, going back to court, you say that you're in court with a litigant in person, and they make all these allegations against you, which are entirely legally irrelevant, I guess. Do you not get any judicial support for your position at all?
No, sadly not.
So in your experience, do judges not feel confident enough to say to the litigant in person, I'm sorry, Mr. Whoever, but that's entirely irrelevant?
No, I've never had a judge say it.
Why don't they say it?
I don't know. I think they give litigants in person a lot of leeway. I think they get to say a lot of things that we as legal representatives wouldn't get to say. I think they get to file things late. They then don't have to make the applications that are needed in time. They can make them on the day. They can make applications without paying the correct fee. I think it's heavily weighed against us when we go to court.
That sounds completely ridiculous. Because they're holding us to a higher standard, a sort of strange moral equivalence, which doesn't seem to logically add up at all.
No, and there is case law on it.
What does that say?
The case law says that litigant in person should not be given any more leeway than somebody who's legally represented. But does that work day to day in the county courts? Not really, because I think the judges are also under pressure. They want to get things dealt with. They don't want to have to keep adjourning matters to come back because litigants in person haven't read the civil procedure rules, which are supposed to be written for people to be able to understand. But if we've got satellite litigation on certain procedural points, like Part 36 offers or, you know, anything procedurally, then if we can't understand it and we've got appeals flying about, how are the lay people supposed to understand it? So I think judges are under extreme pressure as well. And I think litigants in person clog up the courts. And I think that the reason that litigants in person clog up the courts is because costs don't exist in small claims anymore. They've increased the small claims limit. Costs don't exist. People then don't hire lawyers. The judges are then dealing with people that don't know what they're doing. then comes the backlog.
To me, this sounds utterly ridiculous. If you transferred it into a medical setting, imagine an operating theatre where you've got a surgeon and you've got people assisting him who know nothing at all about medicine. And they're slowing everything down, people are dying, the whole thing's falling apart. But we have to do that because that's fair. And we should allow these people who are not surgeons to be able to express their views in any way that they wish. And we seem to have that now in law. And so when the government of many different colours says that we're doing everything possible to reduce the delay in access to justice and bringing cases to an end, allowing this sort of thing to go on is actually making waiting lists longer, costs go up, judicial headaches, all sorts of difficult circumstances. So how would you cure it?
I would lower the small claims track limit and I would bring back costs, be it fixed costs if that's what they want. But I think that allowing litigants in person, particularly now with the advances in AI, to run cases just amok in the court based on what AI tells them they can do, we're on a hiding to nothing, because they are setting out a case that has no merits because AI has told it that it has merits. They are overinflating the value of the case. They are then getting to court. The judge is having to waste time looking up cases that don't exist. It's just a ridiculous scenario. I just think, I feel sorry for the judges sometimes that they have to deal with everything that is going on above and below.
You've raised AI. What do you think that can do for solicitors' practices?
I think it can be good, but only in a support situation. We as a law firm have decided that we won't take on clients that have come to us with a preset case that they've put into AI, telling us how much it's worth, what we should argue, and how we should go about it. We have set our boundary very clear that those clients will not be accepted because they are going to be more of an issue than actually the money that we are going to make dealing with them, because it's fixed costs. It then means that you are at odds with your client already because AI has overinflated the value of the claim. You can't manage their expectations. So I think it's putting law firms in a difficult situation, but I do think it has its benefits and I do think it's going to be extremely helpful, but only in a support situation.
Do you think we'll reach a time when artificial intelligence is so intelligent that it removes the need for many solicitors and their advice?
I don't think it will remove the need for solicitors, no. I think we will always need that element of judgment that I think AI, not in my lifetime or possibly the next generation's lifetime, will be able to develop. I'm not saying it's not possible. I just think that it's not something that the law is not clear-cut. It's not a black and white situation, and every case can turn on its own merits and its own individual situation. So I think AI is exceptionally helpful, but I don't think it's going to take over. I think it will make support staff a little bit less necessary. We've already got the likes of Dragon Dictation, so you can speak into it and it can write the letter for you. So I'm not sure that maybe secretaries will be needed in the future. I think that's a shame because, there will be a lot of losses. I think if it starts to replace paralegals and legal assistants, then where do they get their experience to then become solicitors? So I don't think that it can replace them fully. I think a little bit like the automated machines in Tesco or a supermarket where you process, the food through the belt yourself, it will mean a loss of jobs. I think that's inevitable, but I think we need to find a way around that and make sure that we're not all made redundant through AI.
There is talk, depending on where you look, about artificially intelligent judges who could decide more straightforward matters such as adjournments and that sort of thing. What do you think about that as a possibility?
I think, again, you have to look at how AI has hallucinated cases and hallucinated certain judgments already. And I think once it hallucinates one case, it then continues to hallucinate, and then the situation will inevitably grow worse. So once it embeds something that's wrong in there, then everything that flows from it then could fundamentally be wrong. So I think that, for me, would be a scary situation, that if you had AI making a judgment call, once it did one wrong one, then it's going to follow on from that, isn't it? Because it learns from itself, doesn't it? And
What if that were cured? So you have AI that doesn't hallucinate, and we feed into it every legal judgment that there's ever been, and we feed into it every nuance of how we make decisions. Intrinsically, do you think there's anything wrong with artificially intelligent judges then?
no, I think it could possibly help clear the backlog. Going back to small track cases, it could clear the backlog there. I think the problem you have in smaller track cases is people need to mediate more than they probably do, and that AI could probably help with that. I think in a mediation setting, it would be beneficial that each party put in their case and it comes back with a solution that maybe suits both parties. So I think it would help there. I think it would be exceptionally helpful in terms of reading through medical records and, paginating, sorting, summarising, things like that. I wouldn't want it to take over the judiciary. I think that would be a very dangerous situation.
Have a robot with a wig on.
Yeah. I mean, the government maybe, but not the judiciary.
I think they've already done that. I'd like to talk a little bit, if I may, about composure. You, if you don't mind me saying, appear extremely well composed. What techniques do you use to maintain that composure, would you say?
I think it comes from experience. I think it comes from when you get to a level of being comfortable with yourself, which comes with age, I think. When you get to a point where you don't care what people think anymore. And holding tightly onto your legs so that they don't shake.
What do you do when you're at the end of your tether with whatever it is in your working life? What techniques do you employ to try and push that away?
A glass of wine.
Are we allowed to say that? I don't know. When you say a glass.
I don't. It's one that fits a whole bottle. A long walk with the dogs, a talk with my husband. Maybe people don't get enough opportunity to get out there in nature anymore. And that's where work-life balance comes in. For me, getting on a plane and getting some sun on me changes my whole mindset. If I'm in an extremely stressful situation, getting away, even for 2 or 3 days somewhere in Spain, just completely resets my whole mindset.
Sounds an excellent plan. I'm sure a lot of people watching this will be writing that down, thinking, now I need to aspire to the 3/4 rule. Three quarters in this country and a quarter somewhere else. Sounds an excellent idea. If I may just talk about the cumulative impact of pressure over time, part of what we're already talking about, and having to adapt from the beginning when you opened a practice to where you are now. Has that pressure got worse or better?
It's different. The pressure at the beginning was pressure to find staff, find cases, find my way around the SRA rules. The pressure now is different. When you grow, you have more staff. You have more emotional clients. You have more needs of different people that you need to think about. You have more financial pressure. At one point, just before COVID, I remember we put the wages on our credit card.
Wow.
Now we don't have that financial pressure, and now we have different experienced staff that want to come and work for us. When we first opened, we were glad if anybody applied for a job. Now we have the benefit of winning the Law Society Awards, which means that we've got recognition, which means that people want to come and work for us. So
Tell me a bit about that.
So we won Law Firm of the Year award in November for the small law firm, 1 to 49 staff. And our application was based on the back of a case that we did in 2019, which then only just settled recently. And I don't know if you remember, but there was a gas explosion in New Ferry.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do remember.
And a lot of people lost their homes and were injured. And as a law firm, we went to a community meeting and we met with the New Ferry community and we told them that we would do their claims and we wouldn't take a success fee and that we would try and help them recoup what we could. And so we spent years doing that case and it eventually settled. And we were very grateful. We worked out that our success fee would have been £100,000.
Wow.
Which we probably could have done with at the time.
Did you tell your bank manager you were doing this?
No. But that gave us a lot of kudos in the community, which, always helps build a business. So that was one of our biggest achievements. And I think now that once you start getting that recognition, particularly from your peers, it makes you think that actually I'm doing a good job.
So we're in 2026 now. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
Still holidaying, I hope. Maybe more so than now. Possibly with a larger firm, a bigger team. I don't know. I don't really like to plan that far ahead. I think the difficulty Ian found when he came on board to give me with support, he said to me, "Show me your business plan." I said, "What do you mean business plan?" He said, "Well, show me this year's business plan. Where's your business forecast? Where's your management reports?" I said, "I don't know what you're talking about. There's only me. It's all in my head." He was like, "Well, I need to see something. So I've spent the last few years getting to grips with management reports, forecasting, something I'd never done before because there was only me, and there's still only me. But Ian taught me that it's good to put this all down and plan and forecast, and thankfully that's worked and it's helped. And so I've spent last week in Lanzarote doing some KPIs for the staff for this financial year, doing some forecasting for what I think we might make in the coming year, and just trying to plan what I'm going to do, which I'm still not sure, but hopefully in the coming weeks it'll come to me.
And finally, if you could speak to your younger self aged 18, what would you advise her?
Well, I think like a lot of people, I'd probably say you'll get there eventually, and good on you for sticking with it and for getting where you eventually end up, because not a lot of people would have stuck at it, and a lot of people would have given up and gone and done something else. And so I'm proud of you.
Well, on that note, I think that's a good time to end.
Thank
Thank you very much for coming in.
You're welcome.